Hello, everybody, and welcome to Bright Founders Talk at Temy. Temy is an international software development company that designs, builds, and delivers software for sustainable businesses and promising startups. Welcome to our podcast, where we bring you the most inspiring stories of entrepreneurs and experts in the software development industry. And each week, we interview successful leaders who share their unique journeys and valuable insights. I'm your host, Barry, and today we are lucky enough to have a remarkable guest joining us. Erik Enecker, who is CEO at Ecometrix. Hello, Erik. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, Barry. It's lovely to be here. It's super fun. So looking forward to it.
Truly our pleasure. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I know you're really busy, so the fact that you can spare some time is really appreciated. So for anyone who doesn't know you, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and the company that you work at?
So I've been in entrepreneurship and investments and technology for actually since the wrong side of the millennia. So starting in the end of the 90s, been working in all kinds of different environments and father of three. So trying to juggle sort of personal life and work life, but it's been super fun. Based in Sweden, so I'm a Swedish guy, but I've been in the US for a total of like 7 years, both from an educational standpoint as well as professionally. I actually took my family over there for 3 years, which was an adventure in itself, but we can talk more about that later. So love entrepreneurship. I think it's sort of the foundation of a lot of stuff that's going on, and it's really the future. So it's super happy to be here, and it's going to be fun talking about whatever we want to talk about.
Perfect, good, great. And I love that enthusiasm. So have you always been an entrepreneur? Is it something that when you were growing up, you thought, oh, you know what, I want to be an entrepreneur when I grow up? Is that how it planned out?
Not really. To be honest, it was really, I want to be rich was sort of the basic foundation for whatever I was doing.
You like the basics, right?
Yeah, I got the basics. So no, business school saw sort of consulting as sort of the venue and the world where that's where you can make a lot of money, studying in the US. So went into consulting and after a couple of years, sort of got into technology. This was the big boom in 2000. So a lot of stuff going on in the technology sector. And it was really exciting. Worked as a consultant for a lot of companies and thought sort of this is really cool. But stayed in the agency business for 15 years, basically. Started up 2 agencies. So that's where sort of the first stint of entrepreneurship came in. At the end of that, I sort of realized that consulting is an hour, and that's not fun. And technology there was so much happening. So I just figured I want to get into this space. I want to learn about it. And that's actually where it started around 2015 or something like that.
So you're currently working at Ecometrix. Tell us a little bit about the company.
Well, Ecometrix is a data as a service company focused on the construction industry. And what we do, we provide environmental data to everyone who's involved in construction. And it's basically come out of this. There's this Green Deal in the EU, right? End of 2019, EU and should be climate neutral by 2015. And the construction industries is about a third of all CO2 emissions globally. And so what we are doing is we're trying to find a space and try to help sort of the EU to meet that goal with what we can do in our sort of space. So data as a service company focused on the construction industry, environmental data, basically.
And have you always been into the environment and sustainability, or was that something relatively new for you?
It's relatively new, to be honest. I've been tracking, I've been reading a lot about it. I've been concerned for a couple of years. As I said, I'm a father of 3, so I know there's a future that we need to be really concerned about, and I'm worried. I've been working with data and analytics for a long, long time, but mostly marketing and social media and all kinds of difference, and also sort of operationally. But never environmental data. So I actually slipped into this by accident, but it's super fun. It's so much happening. Yeah, it's really evolving the space.
So what has been the biggest challenge to date for you? It can be with your company Ecometrix now or just from a previous experience.
Well, I would say the biggest challenges today that I'm facing, both as a company owner and CEO and also as a person, is there's so much going on with AI and Gen AI, and it's really hard to navigate. Fortunately, we're built on that platform, so we're really leveraging the technology. But also, everywhere, right? It's so much challenges. From my kids going to school, can they use it, not use it? My wife's a teacher. How should they sort of relate to this and all the companies? And also when you build a company, I would say it's really different today. How you can build a company as opposed to how it was 5 years ago, because you can use leverage the technology to just be more scrappy and more efficient.
So you mentioned AI there, and we always manage to drop it into these podcasts. So since we're talking about it, let's talk about it now. So what are like the trends within AI that you see, and like what do you feel are going to be the big hitters in the future coming up?
Well, it's the crystal ball question kind of thing, right? So it's really hard. But what I would say is one of the biggest things for everyone is everyone sort of know they have to take that into account and relate to it and to figure out how to best leverage the technology, because honestly, the technology is awesome. Ecometrix as a company, we're collecting disparate data from a lot of different data sources all over the internet, publicly available, but there's so many different sort of formats and types of data, and it's really disparate. And without Gen AI, it would be really, really hard to sort of decompose, declassify it, and work with this data in an efficient manner. So for us, it's just a natural step. But I would say in general, I think a lot of scrambling right now going on into how can we leverage the technology, where can we put in conversations with a lot of sort of companies that I'm involved with, but as well as clients of ours that sort of, we know we need this, but we don't know how. So help us out kind of thing. One of our owners is a digital agency, and I've had a lot of conversations. I've been working with actually machine learning since the end of the 90s. So the tools for building models, it's been around the block for a long time. Neural networks been around for a long time, but Gen AI is sort of a different ballgame because now you can really scale it in a whole new way, basically. So.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because the speed of pace which AI has been developing is incredible. And I know, like in the public sphere, we're kind of lagging behind what's happening behind the scenes. So as a rock it seems that there's actually a lot more going on in the background that we don't see. In terms of like your stakeholders, do you get automatic buy-in when you mention AI, or are people a bit apprehensive? Or some people might even be tired of it, as new fads and trends. Some people are.
Well, it's all across the spectrum, right? Like always. To not saying that this is a fad or anything, but I think there's a lot of focus on it right now, and like everything else, it's going to mature, and people are going to know where and when to use it in the best possible way. I meet all kinds of different ways to think of it. Some of them is this is like the new future. This is everything. Everything's going to change because of this too. This is just machine learning. It's been around for a long time. I don't understand the big fuss and everything in between. What I think is, as usual with new technology, do you have the use case? Do you have the economics of scale to use it? Then go for it, because it is a beautiful tool. But as you said, there's a lot of happening. So the other thing is, don't tie yourself down into a specific technology. Try to be a little bit agnostic. Use it, but don't sort of build too deep into a specific technology, I would say.
As a CEO, do you have to have like lots of hats, or are you the kind of person that is happy to delegate and just let them take care of it, or would you like to be involved in everything?
Oh, this is the trick, right? I've been working with a lot of entrepreneurs. I love doing different things, right? I love this. Every day is different. And to be honest, we don't really know what the day is going to entail in the morning. We just know by the end of the day. And I love it. It's fun. It's dynamic. It's fluid. I think that's fun. And you have to be everywhere, right? Like we're a small team. We're about 10 people involved in Ecometrix. And so, yeah, you have to do a lot of different things. But that said, I think the biggest trick as an entrepreneur is to know when to let go. For me, it's been sort of, I have a CTO, a co-founder, and he's sort of, he gets to do a lot of the technology stuff. I'm not a tech guy. I'm more of a product guy and marketing. So for me, it's that part. But again, everyone has to do everything, right? So in the beginning. But I think that's one of the biggest challenges for entrepreneurs when they finally scale up and when they have to go a little bit more corporate. It's a big change for the entrepreneur. And a lot of entrepreneurs have a hard time letting go. So I think the strength of a really good entrepreneur is to know when to let go. And also for some, it's like, yeah, now I need to hire real CEOs who's more corporate because it's different, right? So
I never heard the phrase to go corporate before, but I know exactly what you mean when you say it. It's really, it's a new word. I'm glad you said it. So we coined it here. We coined it here. So in terms of like talking and communication within the team and networking, like how important has that been for you in your experience?
So it's always important, right? It's the foundation of everything that you do, I would say. It's not only professional, it's also personal, right? Everyone you know, it's always, so that networking is super important. And then, but also to be understand sort of the intricacies of networking, because you have to network in a way that's suitable with you as a person. So some people are very outgoing and go to all these conferences and then they network like super easy, and some people don't. But regardless of who you are as a person, finding a good way to network and leverage the network. I think not only networking, but sort of thinking about how you can leverage it, because networking is about mutual beneficial exchanges, right? Professionally and personally, if you want to take that sort of angle to it. So not using people, but trying to help as well is at least as important. So reaching out, can I help you out? I saw you lost your job or whatever. Anything I can do, that kind of thing is really important. And not only for business, I think, but as a sort of personal thing, because if someone's going through a hardship or need help, you should help.
You mentioned the two types are there. Which one are you?
It kind of depends on the day, I would say.
Very adaptable.
Honestly, sometimes I'm really outgoing, and sometimes you're a little bit introvert. It kind of depends. I've sort of learned by myself that in some situations, if you're really sort of in a high good mood, you can be really good in conferences. But sometimes you're not. You're busy. You're stressed out. Then I'm not a good person there. I know some people. I've been working with some people that are always like 100% in those events, and I'm impressed by them because I'm not that type of a person.
And some people say to me, it's right place, right time. Do you find that is the key to success, just being in the right place at the right time? Or is there a bit more to it than that?
It's one of the key components, right? Because timing is important, but I would say execution is even more important. Because to be honest, there are a lot of ideas out there and a lot of very successful entrepreneurs where the idea is not novel at all. They're just really good at execution. So I would say timing is really important, but execution and the team around sort of the execution is even more important than the timing. But if your timing is off, you're gone. So
yeah, timing is everything, right? You mentioned earlier about the rapid pace of change and just like keeping up to date. Like, how do you keep up to date in your particular field? What did you go to expositions? Do you go to meetings? What is it that you do?
Well, everything, right? So you have to talk, but I would say boots on the ground is the most important part. So talking to people in the industry, having meetings, not being afraid to say, hey, listen, I don't know what's going on, to be a little bit sort of honest about that and talk to people. What do you see? What are your needs? How are things progressing? But also just keep tabs on all the conferences and publications and within environmental data that we're working with. It's so much happening. It's the CSRD is coming out. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but basically it's all of, I think the 50,000 biggest companies in the EU need to declare their environmental impact in an auditable manner. So basically in the same sort of level as you have your financial reporting. And it's putting a lot of pressure everywhere, right? Not only on the 50,000 biggest companies, because they have suppliers who have suppliers who have suppliers. It's going all through down to this, in construction, to the small guy working electrics and having his own company. It's going through and all that data needs to be generated, and it's a little bit wild west right now. So it's exciting, and as I said, I love it. I think it's fun, but a lot of going on and a lot needs to happen.
So you mentioned your company. How do you actually differentiate yourself from the competition? What is it that you do better than everyone else?
That's a good question. But to be honest, I would say there are two things. One is we're really focused. So we are only focused on collecting, validating, and sharing data. There's a lot of other entrepreneurs and companies out there doing different kinds of things to provide platforms where you can sort of calculate your impact or do reporting and all those things. So we're just focusing on the data part of it, which is big enough, to say the least. And then we're just focusing on the construction industry as well. So we're really focused. That's one of the differences. And with the team that we have, I'm pretty confident that we can be really good in this space. I think we are deep into one specific application and use case, as opposed to a lot of other competitors who are a little bit more in other spaces. They can be focused, but a little bit more broader sort of use cases.
Are they more the jack of all trades then? And you're the master?
Oh, well, who knows, right? It's just the company is fairly new. It's been around for 18 months. And the industry is new as well. It's evolving. So it's not a sort of industry that's been around before. So, but I would say there's a big battle going on between this sort of incumbent ERP systems that want to get into this space. And there are a lot of new entrepreneurs running sort of platforms where you can do a lot of reporting and analytics as well. So yeah, it's going to be fun to see where it ends.
When I listen to you speak, I can feel the passion, I can feel the inspiration, and you're obviously driving things forward. It's nice when things are going well, but when it's stormy seas, how do you keep yourself motivated? Are you a bit of a panicker, or are you cool, calm, and collected? What kind of person are you when times are hard?
Well, it kind of depends. If you ask my wife, she's going to say I'm neurotic and really panicky. But you have to be cool, right? And I think that's one of the things as an entrepreneur. I always give this advice to entrepreneurs. It'll take longer than you think. You're going to hit a lot of bumps on the road. A lot of stuff that you thought were right is gonna be wrong. So you just have to have that mindset and think of it as a learning experience. And because you hit a lot of bumps, to be honest, and the value of death is not just something in a PowerPoint. Is there, and sometimes some days you just have that. And it's, for me, the team is important. So because I'm surrounded by founders who are part of the team, and sometimes when you have a down day, someone else has an up day, and that can help you out to get through the day. But then also, honestly, just go out for a run or something and just get it out of your system and sort of land the day. And it's like, okay, this day was pretty bad, but tomorrow's going to be a better day.
With that in mind, in terms of like your community, what kind of people are you looking for when you're looking to hire and take on board? Are you like-minded people who are different from you? What qualities stand out for you?
I think for me, it's two things. I think I really believe in diversity. So I really want to have a diverse team, different backgrounds, age groups, all kinds of sort of differences. I think that's a really good strength. But I want the team to have a common sort of passion about, in Ecometrix case, it's about providing data to the construction industry, because we think that data will be a catalyst for change and actually driving down the CO2 emissions globally. And that's an important part of sort of the world that we're working with. And I want everyone to share that passion. And also to be sort of aware of what the entrepreneurship and startup environment entails. Because I think a lot of people really don't know that when they go in as hirees. They don't really understand. So I usually tell people when we hire them, it's like, you have to be comfortable with the fact that we're making 6 months plans. We don't have plans that are longer than that. And those are going to change like 3 times during that 6 months. So you just have to be comfortable with that. Are you that? Are you comfortable with that? Or are you a person who needs a little bit more control? If you need more control, startup environment is enough for you.
So we have mentioned AI briefly, and usually I save it to the end because you mentioned it earlier. I thought I'd link it in then. What other like tech trends are you looking at? What other things are you looking at, possibly crystal ball aside, that you think might be coming up in the future?
There's a lot of things going on. If you put sort of Gen AI in the perspective of the industry that we're in, there's a lot of things going on there that needs to happen. And to be honest, the construction industry is pretty far behind on the curve in terms of digitalization. So there's still a lot of notes passed around and papers and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things going on. And I think AI is really going to make an impact there to help facilitate and actually accelerate sort of development. I think that's one of the keys, right? I discussed this with a couple of CTOs and other founders. Is 5 years ago, when you build a tech team, you'd have to build a pretty big tech team, and you have to have like juniors and all these kinds of things. But with the new tools coming out for development, you can be so much more efficient. If you're semi-senior or very good developer, you can developed for like 5 or 10 people, because a lot of the sort of the time consuming tasks that just needs to be done, you can sort of just use AI and just print the code. Basically, you can just check it. So I think that's really changing a lot of the spaces that we're in terms of in the startup environment, is that you'll see a lot more startups growing a lot faster because you can do much more with less resources. And I think that's the key to the whole thing, right?
And you mentioned your time in America as well. I'm kind of curious from a personal perspective, like the mindset. How does, like, you're Swedish, obviously you're European, but how does that differ from your time in America? Do they have a different mindset on how they approach problems, or is it basically the same?
No, I would say there are differences, cultural differences. I mean, there are cultural differences in Europe as well, right? So, but yeah, it is. Some of the things I really love about the US culture is the confidence and sort of the breasting up and sort of being sort of, I can do this, and that kind of mentality, and also sort of the scope of things. So they're when they're starting up and working, they're like Europe, right? The size, the economy is the size of Europe, so everything they do has that size. I met CMOs like, oh, I only have a budget about 15 million US. We're small, but I was like, what? In Sweden, that's pretty big. Well, here it's not enough, right? So I love working in that environment. It's super fun, and but there are differences. I usually tell this story just to get a gist of it. That's like when you ask, if you ask someone to put a goal for the next year, especially in sales or commercial, right? So if you ask a Swede and he thinks like he's going to perform a 2, whatever scale, you can pick whatever scale, and he's going to say 1 because he wants to exceed expectations. If you ask an American the same thing, he's going to say 10. Right? He thinks 2, it's going to say 10 because it's expected of him to really stretch it, to be really aggressive. And the funny thing that happens is basically if you have a Swedish CEO ask an American, can you give us your goals for next year? He's going to get back a 10 and he's going to think, wow, he's going to do 20. While in reality, he's going to do 2, right? So, and it goes through so many different things, that dynamic. And I think that's a big difference between the US and Europe. You just have to be aware of.
Do you have a preference for one over the other?
Not really. Not really. To be honest, all cultures have strengths and weaknesses. You just have to be aware of it. And I think that's why I like the diversity of the team. Different cultures, different backgrounds, and just being aware of sort of the strengths and weaknesses of the differences. And then you can really leverage that.
Lovely. And we are coming towards the end of the podcast, unfortunately. So my final question to you is the one that I ask everyone. And you did actually give a little bit of advice to entrepreneurs, but what other advice would you give to someone who may be in the early stages or just about to set up a company for the first time?
Well, it's first of all, you should. If you have thoughts about it, you should definitely try it at some point in time. But I would also say, like you said earlier in the cast, it's basically that there's going to be a lot of bumps in the road. So you have to be in a situation where you don't get stressed out of it. So I've met entrepreneurs that just got a kid, really needs their salary every month to pay the mortgages, and they're starting off as an entrepreneur. And I was like, oh, there might be months where you don't get paid. Can you handle that?
Ride, right?
Yeah. Can you really handle that? And I think that's one of the things. Like I usually say, like, be aware that you can be without a salary for 2 years because you're going to hit some rough patches. And if you don't need to have it, perfect. It's like, congratulations, you can use the money for other things. So that's one of the things. The other thing is, don't be afraid to fail, because failure is part of entrepreneurship. I have this picture I usually show where everyone sees like a straight highway and you have like start and goal. You've probably seen that. And it's like, this is what everyone thinks entrepreneurship is about. And then you have another image next to it sitting where you have all these off tracks and you're sort of de-road and everything, and it's really circly kind of snaky thing, and you might end up at the goal in the end. So just be aware of that and really embrace it, I would say. Have fun.
Perfect. Great advice, Erik. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Pure gold nuggets there. So again, thank you so much for taking time to speak with us today. We really appreciate you talking with us.
It was a pleasure. It was fun. And I was happy to be here.
Thank you so much. That was Erik Enecker, CEO at Ecometrix.